te ahiahi ki a tātou ko te tūmana ko I pai te wā kai, I re kanga kai, a tōna wā pia ka tai tātou te piritahi ki te kaitahi nā tēnā he nui ngā hua o roto I tēnā āhuatanga. Ai, ka mihi anō ki a tātou. This session, we are going to focus on Ikura, also knowing the whakapapa of that kupu, according to our Dr. Ngahuia Murphy, that it's mai Ikura waka. So exploring our menstrual cycle, our moon cycle, our Ikura. He nui ngā ingoa, there's lots of kupu that our ancestors have shared about this and have left us lots of treasures, I guess, within that. So part of our wānanga today, we'll be joined with Holly, Arohanui, and Harina. Apologies from Lani, kei te Māwiwi ia. Lani, who was joining us today, is Māwiwi, but we have the beautiful Arohanui to also complement our space. So ngā mihi for being able to support this kōrero today, Arohanui as well. So kaore au e tīmata, kua karakia ki e tātou, I mohiwa I rongo ai te karakia whakakapi, engari ka whakakapi tā tātou hui a te mutunga pia ka tuku ki a koe Harina, a muri atu. Engari ka aro nui au ki te kaupapa o tēnei wāhanga. I'll go straight to the focus of our of Ikura, and I'm going to join two questions. So for those who don't know, I want, if we're not familiar with our kai kōrero, if you've just joined in this session, so just to whakamārama ko wai koutou, and growing up, what was your relationship with your Ikura like? So ka tīmata pia ki a koe Arohanui, so ko wai koe, and what was growing up, if we think about those early stages in our taiohitanga, what was our relationship or a knowing of Ikura?
Tēnā tātou, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Arohanui West tōku ingoa, he uri tēnei no rotorua, no te aroa whānui, no Ngāti Awa, no Ngāti Tūwhare toa hoki. I am the kaiarahi a Ipurangi, so I'm the online kind of gal here at Parakore, and my relationship with my Ikura as a taiahi was, I remember being like quite excited to get it because all of my friends had it, and I think I was 13 when I got it, but I felt like I was late because everyone had already had it, and so I was kind of like excited waiting for it because I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to be that guy who's like year 11 and still doesn't have it. So that's what I remember feeling, and all I knew was like pads and tampons wrapped in plastic, and like especially the U brand was really popular because it's like wrapped in pink or purple packaging, so it's really appealing to like the young teenage eye. And so I remember only telling my sister as well. I never even told my mum, and she got really quite upset at me for that, but I think I felt a bit awkward. Like I remember crying, and I don't even know why, but I just felt like, what's happening to me? So because I'm only 20 now, and I've been on this journey of like rediscovering what it is to have your Ikura and like honor your tinana, it was really, I guess, refreshing to learn this new information and maybe understand why I felt that way, or why I use the products that I use, and how I can kind of create a space to share whakaaro and share knowledge, and hopefully encourage mama or tamariki to use products that are better for their tinana and better for their taiao, so that they can nurture that relationship with their own body and view the Ikura differently maybe. Yeah, sorry if that's a long-winded answer, but you kind of threw me in it. So I really took you guys on that journey.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe Arohanui. Ka huri ki a koe Holly. Ko wai koe, and what was your relationship like with your Ikura in those early years?
Tēnā koe Hinirangi, and tēnā koutou katoa, he uri o Ngāti Rā Kaipāka no ngā nuhaka. Engari nai nei e noho ana ki whāngarei. So I'm the kaiarahi for Parakore for Taitokiro, and sunny as whāngarei today. It's so beautiful. And yes, I think I was the opposite to you, Arohanui. I was like, did not want to get it, and felt like pretty annoyed about the situation when I did. It felt like I used to do lots of swimming and it felt like a barrier to that. And I felt a lot of social shame. So like, didn't feel like tampons were like something that anyone could know about. Like I had to hide them in my bag and then like sneak to my bag and hide them up my sleeve to get to the toilet. And not that anybody said that you should be embarrassed to have your period, but it was just something that I felt like social pressure of. And it's interesting because actually the kōrero that my mum was giving me at the time was like that it's totally natural. You know, she was just like, oh, what are you on about? Like, stop being a drama queen. It's natural. All women go through this. Like, yeah, she was pretty much like, get over it. So yeah, it was like those two competing things of like my mum trying to encourage me to understand that it's a totally natural process, that that I shouldn't be ashamed of, but then like social pressure that meant I felt kind of annoyed and embarrassed about it, and wanted to keep it private. Yeah, and I guess like the biggest change I've been noticing is I used to call it the time of the month, which is like the most vague thing you could ever say. Like, oh yeah, it's just that time of the month. Don't even say the words blood or period or anything that might, I don't know, make someone feel grossed out or something. But now I've changed to the kupu Ikura. And for me, that is like a bit more saying exactly what is happening, but also reminds me of, yeah, our whakapapa. So what Dr. Ngahui Murphy says, mai kura waka. So yeah, that has been the biggest, I think, outwardly change is the different use of kupu. But yeah, kia ora.
Tēnā koe. Harina, he hau whakaaro.
Me whakamohi anō
Ai,
koa.
koe, ka tai.
Tēnā tātou ko Harina, Rina Haru Pāpera tōku ingoa. No Te Arawa whānui, engari e ū ana ki Ngāti Te Rangi Unuora o Ngāti Pikiao, Ngāti Whakauwe, Ngāti Rangitihi anō hoki. Contributing actively, which is really important for me to do. So otherwise from Te Arawa whānui, I'm from Ngārua Inerangi, Ngāti Ruanui Taranaki Tūturu, Ngāti Tama ki Taranaki anō hoki, and then branch off to Tainui, Tūwharetoa, and up ki Ngāti Kahu, Te Whānau Moana me Te Rorohuri, Piringa ki Muri Whenua, Ngāpuhi, and then down to Ngāti Toa Rangatira, and further on to Te Tauihu, and I'm still exploring my whakapapa. We've also got hononga over to Tūhoi and Ruapani, and Kahungunu ki Te Wairoa. And I don't always share all of it, but this kaupapa in particular is quite deep and actually quite relevant to our whenua, I feel, where we're from, and our whakapapa, because that's how we got here, through this beautiful taonga and Māori. So my knowledge of this as a young person was actually not really existent. Mm-hmm. And I just remember, well, I don't remember ever having any education around that space. So I just remember, yeah, maybe that's social shame, but also like just not knowing what this is. And yeah. So one thing I remember is that I had a really good friend, big sister, who used to look after me, and she referred to it as her mate. So we would be doing things, or like we couldn't go swimming because she has her mate. So I remember that being a part of like an educational way of explaining what that is. I never knew about the things that we're going to be talking about now. And for me now, I understand that it is te awa o te atua. So I refer to it as so. Also Waifero, Ikura as well. And it's a beautiful journey that I'm still exploring.
Kia ora, Haine Harina, you've learned us, you've guided us to the next pathway around, so we may have come across some new learnings, and I know that we're working to reconnect with this in many ways at Parakore and in our whānau, in our communities, with the, I guess, renaissance, or from more academics and more whānau talking about te mana o te ikura, which you've all touched on already, and talking about whakapapa. So I want us to talk a little bit more in depth. So reflecting, that's awesome to know that you've been able to share where you've come from, in terms of, we will kind of have heard the sentiment that that mātauranga about ikura and where that whakapapa of that word comes from, or our atua has not been shared in our childhood. And so how has this changed now, and drawing in some of those learnings that you've come across in the spaces, in the mahi and in your whānau perhaps as well. Ka tīmata o ka huriki a koe, Holly. So how has this changed as an adult?
Yeah, kia ora. Yeah, definitely. The more I learn and the more I realize how not silly, but like how unnecessary it was to feel that social shame, the less shame I do feel. So yeah, I'm still actually pretty private about it. Like, I consider it something of it's mine, and it's my own thing, and I like to just have it that way. I'm not one to share lots about it, but that feels like a more conscious choice than a pressured, like something that I've been pressured to do from social pressure. Yeah, so it feels quite nice to be able to make those conscious choices, I guess. So I think another big, when we started, when I started being privy to these learnings from Dr. Ngahuia Murphy and through Parakore, definitely I loved the ideas that I was hearing in theory, like about our connection to our tūpuna through this waifiro, but I don't think that it had fully clicked in yet. Like, I was more just like the preaching about it, but not actually like embodying it. And then so I recently became hapu with my first pēti, and it has actually been that and not getting my ikura that has like made myself have this huge internal realization that of really, like, and it might sound silly, but I really understand now how our ikura is whakapapa. Like, every ikura was a potential realization of our whakapapa, a potential continuation of our whakapapa. And it doesn't mean it's bad that it isn't realized, but it's just like, it has just like totally revealed itself to me, the sacredness then of that all of those time of the month were a potential of what I have now. And so yeah, I just have been really dwelling on that idea, and also of how I can share that idea with my pēti, so that it grows up knowing that sacredness, like really understanding that sacredness of whakapapa through ikura. Yeah, which I would love to hear chat about that in the audience, like what rituals and practices parents use with their tamariki, well, not even parents, caregivers use with tamariki in their life, to share these learnings with them. Yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora, Holly. Oh, very like powerful way to think, have that kind of experience of how that ikura is nourishing. Now it's redirected to your pepe. So it's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Aroha nui, and I guess that might speak, I know you've spoken a lot about the notion of this is our only regenerative blood, and it kind of ties in with what Holly's talked about too. I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about that, and also how what we're essentially talking about is Māori understandings of ikura, how that shaped how you perceive ikura now.
Yeah, so the regenerative blood kōrero, if any of you have come to a wānanga ikura with either myself or anyone else in our rōpū, you would have heard that term, and I learned it from Dr. Ngahuia Murphy, and I went to one of her kōrero that she had with us when we were planning to deliver these wānanga, and it just really stuck with me. And she said that when you bleed with your ikura, it is the only blood that is regenerative blood, because it is the only blood that is non-wounded blood. Every other time that you bleed, it is from something that is mamai, like you've gotten a cut or a wound, or you've got a blood nose or whatever, like it's wounded blood. But when you bleed with your ikura, that's intentional blood. It's meant to be there. It's not a symbol of wound, but it's a symbol of whakapapa. And when I say it's regenerative, there's kōrero in our kōrero tukuiho, that it was used for ceremonial purposes, and it was collected because it was understood that it had power to it. And yeah, I think that that played a huge part on how I perceived my own ikura, because, you know, I grew up in Pākehā schooling. I went to Catholic schools, and I, similarly to Holly, I felt like it was something to be hidden, something you couldn't talk about, something that was paru. That was the biggest thing. It felt really paru, like it was dirty, and it was so hidden that you almost felt like you were the only person who it happened to, because you didn't talk to other people about it. So you thought it was just you. And yeah, so growing up with this narrative that it was paru and dirty and something to be hidden, and then learning from, you know, a powerful mana wahine that actually this is intentional and this is your body doing what your body needs to do, and it's healthy. And your tupuna didn't think it was paru, your tupuna celebrated it, and your tupuna used it in ceremonial like rituals because they thought it was that powerful. And that alone like really changed my narrative, because I was like, wow, I'm not even listening to my own tupuna. I'm letting Pākehā men dictate how I feel about this ritual that's happening in my tinana. And that's when I was like, okay, that's enough of that. Yeah, so it's actually really uplifting, and I don't know, like whakaora is like what comes to mind when you kind of reconnect with your own kōrero from your own tupuna. It just reaffirms, I guess, the strength and the power and the mana of the wahine, I guess. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Kia ora aroha nui. I see you nodding there, Harina. He whakaaro anō o hei tāpere. Have you got any other kōrero to add to this particular question?
Yes. Oh no, I'm nodding because I'm just like, yes, girl. Yeah. So mā tauranga about it. So not knowing anything about it, it really changes your perspective on life, even your wairua and your ngākau, because that's what comes with that is what you learn and what you see and how you immerse. So yeah, I love that regenerative blood. Also, she says, or I think you said, Aroha nui, you know, it's a portal to the other realm. And I watched her one of her videos, Ngahuia Murphy, yesterday, and you know, it's so powerful. It is the creation of life itself on earth through us. Tērā te mana me te tapu me te Māori o te ikura. And yeah, I think it would definitely changed the perspective of a young woman, understanding that power and mana as a coming into that space, having that space, and like you said, Holly, that whakapapa that we hold every month, you know, every cycle is how powerful it is. And so I am now understanding. One thing about it is that my learning came more through experience once I started using the moon cup. So I hadn't really immersed into Ngāhuia Murphy and her kōrero. So it was really just through learning. And what the main reason that I did so was because I had learned a lot of education about how much para is going into the whenua. So Te Tiaki Papa Tuanuku with product was one, and the other reason was I was keen to give it, you know, to understand a better natural flow. So my learning came from that. And so one thing that I never knew is that how beautiful our wairere and awa is, and even the distinct aroma of it is quite, you know, he Māori, and it's quite intergenerational. And so if we only ever use product from chemical made product, like tampons and pads and other things that you buy at the shop, is it mixes with the chemicals. So that smell that we just live our lives thinking. And I remember I've got a cousin, and he actually, you know, he kind of says like, oh, period stinks, you know, like sort of like that sort of kōrero. And like even a wahine will be like, you know, because there is a distinctive smell if you use those products. Engari, once I started using the moon cup, I understood how beautiful it actually is. And I like have wānanga with that space and understand the aroma of it. And I have a son, so I didn't have this knowledge either when I had my first child, which is all part of that mātauranga. And obviously because through colonisation our mātauranga was taken away from us. So I think it's important that we bring it back. And yeah, it's just so lovely.
Kia ora. Kia ora. And thanks for touching on some of the transitions, which we'll move into. So talking about and sharing, you know, that shame, knowing that that was intentional shame that was placed on wahine, and that's a colonial thing, and that part of our decolonizing is actually reconnecting with our ancestral understandings of Ikura, and to know that we knew it was powerful. So I guess if we think of it in terms of colonization, that's an interruption of that relationship we've had with our Ikura. And once we've become aware that this has been an intentional process to, I guess, denigrate the mana of wahine by early colonists, it's like once we kind of have the mātauranga to know, actually, this isn't how my ancestors viewed it, and it was something that empowered us, changes how we see it, but also may change some of the practices, which I hear how you're talking about the Māori of Ikura, Harina, and your kōrero. I wonder if I talk to you, Arohanui, about whether, so coming to understand your Ikura in alignment with how our ancestors viewed our Ikura, did it change any practices, or does it interrelate with what you might do at that time, or how you may function differently now that you've come to reconnected with that understanding?
Yeah, well, firstly, obviously I changed, in the last 2 years, I've changed all the products that I've used. So initially I was using like pads and tampons, just that's literally all I knew. So yeah, and then when I got on this journey and I learned that it's covered in bleach, it's covered in plastic, and I'm sending it to landfill. And also I always felt like a little bit, and I don't know if this was like a Māori whakaaro or not, but I always felt weird about putting like that blood in the bin. Like there was always something weird about that to me, because that's like literally your DNA, like that's coming from, you know, a wāhi tapu, and I always felt weird about putting it in the bin. And even before I had like that environmental lens on it. And I agree with Rina, there's like a smell attached to it, but it's because of all the chemicals that are in those products. So it was really rewarding when I switched to like my favorite products. We can talk about this, right? This is what the space is for. My favorite products is the Moon Cup and the period undies. I mainly use the Awa period undies, and like it just changed my whole view on it, I guess. Like when I got the period undies, I was really excited to get my period because I was like, oh, I want to try these. Like, I want to see how they work. And I love them. I work out in them. I sleep in them. I do everything in them. And you can get the really heavy duty ones, and it just feels like you're wearing normal taro. So I really loved them. And yeah, I guess it just changed the way it made me feel. Like with the Moon Cup, it's a really simple process. I personally change it in the shower, and so like it just runs away with the water. It's not like weird. You don't have to put anything in the bin. I've talked to some women who have used it, have just emptied it in the grass because they know that that blood contains a lot of nutrients. And that reminds us again that we are the Taiao. As wahine, we are actually, as tangata, we are living, breathing members of the environment. And so what comes naturally from our body does actually feed back into our natural world. So that blood has amazing nutrients that is amazing for our Taiao. And also one thing that changed in maybe my ritual is I let myself rest. I remember being 16 and like so exhausted, and because I personally get really tired when I have my ikura and really grumpy, and I would still force myself to go to the gym. Whereas now I'm like, no, like I'm allowed to rest. And I know my tupuna had a whare dedicated for them to rest during this time. They didn't force themselves to do anything because they understood there's something happening internally, and that might be expressing itself externally by making us more tired. So honoring your body, listening to your body is probably the biggest thing that I took on. Yeah, sorry. I always give long answers. I'm sorry.
Kia ora, your tupuna wants you to rest, Arohanui. I've been told that too. And it's really powerful too, that we need to hold that space. So thank you for sharing. Holly, he kōrero mo tēnei wāhanga. Have you got any things to add or reflect on? I see you sharing in the chat too.
Yeah, aroha mai, I like totally missed the question because I was just like too entranced about Harina's kōrero about aroma.
Whether you have any, since you've gained some māramatanga around Māori understandings of Ikura, have any of your practices changed, or have you started thinking about different practices you might implement, whether it be the products, whether it be to rest, whether it be to,
Yeah, kia ora. Yeah, definitely more rest and openness to that rest, I think. Like, I think I have always rested a lot during that time, but I guess previously I'd been quite resistant to that. Like I had still tried to go to work, even though I felt shit in the morning. Felt bad in the morning. Like I would still try and go to mahi, and just even if I wasn't achieving anything, just sit at my desk and give myself some kind of facade of productivity or something. Like I was so, and so yeah, definitely it's been rest, but it's been open to that rest and being comfortable about it, and changing my understanding to see that rest as normal rather than seeing like the grind and busyness and constant productivity of capitalism as the normal. Moving away from that and just seeing more conscious and planned rest around that time as something I want to do. And so it has meant more planning. Like so I use I was using the app that kind of tells you where on your cycle are, and I found that really helpful because even though I was quite regular, I would still kind of forget until a week, you know, and then a week before I'm crying and arguing, and you know, and it's kind of like, I don't know, some ad with a puppy on it or something, and then you get your Ikura like 2 days later and you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, so having that kind of ability, that tool of the app meant I could plan my months a bit better, and so I wouldn't plan to have any hui on the first few days, and even maybe the day before, and just try and manage my work in a way that if I needed to just fully be resting on the couch for a 1 or 2 days like that was that not only was I comfortable about it, but my work planning had space for it. So yeah, definitely around planning, and just I think it has been part of a more general move towards listening to my body more, practicing listening to what my tinana is telling me about what it needs. And so like around that like Ikura time, like there's always like, I want comfort foods, I want to be like snuggly and warm and those types of things. Also knowing what is like best for my tinana at that time. So knowing like, yes, I just want to like lie on the couch all day, but also then by the end of the day, I know my back is sore. And so like encouraging myself to go for walks, like, or do some stretching. And so, yeah, listening to my body, but also knowing what it needs around that time is, yeah, and just being open to that, like, and making space for that. And what is like, yeah, like capitalism, colonialism is so everywhere in our lives, just trying to carve out these little spaces for living the values, living according to the values that I'm trying to preach and that I want to live by. Yeah.
Kia ora. And to kind of link onto that pātai with rest and with our practices, have we seen, or within our whānau, I'm going to transition. So this isn't, I see we're being really intentional as individuals sharing those experiences. I wonder whether when whānau have learnt this kōrero about Māori understandings of Ikura, have there been any ways in which they've been more supportive of you during this time, or more, you know, if we're having more openness to this kaupapa, how tāne can be involved, or how kuia or aunties or whoever who may not have their Ikura now, but, or even our tamariki, how within our whānau, how have we, I guess, observe change, if any, around when they've found out about Māori understandings of Ikura, and what would have our ancestors would have done during this time. Ka pata ki a koe aroha nui te tūtahi.
I am going to just like answer this randomly, but I remember what this makes me think of is like spaces that make you really comfortable to talk about Ikura. And I have an auntie in Rotorua, and her house is decorated with photos of like a mama breastfeeding and like depictions of the Ikura, all from Māori artists. And it's like depictions of the Ikura, breastfeeding, all of these like amazing, like literally nude wahine photos that like really, I don't know. And when I saw those, I was like, this is so cool. Like this is us reclaiming, because this is something that if you were to invite people who didn't know this mātauranga, they'd probably be shocked and they'd be like maybe offended. But it was like a celebration of not only this time, and like, I don't know, I can't even like kind of put it together in words, but it makes you feel really comfortable and warm, because you're like, wow, like not only is this normal, but this is actually celebrated. Like we're celebrating not only this time in our lives, like of a mama breastfeeding, like why should she have to hide that? That's a whole different kaupapa, but it's kind of similar. And then the Ikura as well, and like putting it on a pedestal, hanging it in your hallway, in your house, for everyone to see, and celebrating Māori artists, like that to me was like, wow, this is a safe space for us to like talk, and it's getting normalized. So I'm like, oh, I want to be that auntie. Like, I want to be that person so that my niece can be like, auntie, I got my ikura, and I'm like, beautiful, let's celebrate, like let's make this, like, you know, who cares, tell the world, let's put on a kai and let's like celebrate you. I know like that's what I want for my kids, to never feel that whakamā that I felt, and never feel paru about it, but to feel celebrated is like the biggest thing. Because I was on this journey quite later, and I'm the youngest in my whānau, I can't say like it's been like a phenomenal personal change in my whānau. My sister, she was already on a moon cup. She actually was the one who put me onto moon cups before I even got on this environmental journey. So it's just her and I, we're the only girls in my whānau. And we're really open to talking about our ikura together. Like, I'll be like, it's so heavy this week. And she's like, wow, you've been over exercising, or, well, you didn't sleep enough. Like we're just like that. And it kind of, we feed off each other, and we're on the same cycle. God help us. So, no, but I just think like don't underestimate the power of normalizing it. Like with the tāne as well, I'm not scared to tell my brother, tell my partner, tell my dad, whoever, because we literally all came from the ikura. We talk about it's a portal between universes. We, us living beings, are kind of the whakatina makatanga of the ikura. So yeah, I just think normalizing it, but also celebrating it with hakari, with being just totally comfortable to talk about it, engage tāne in the conversation, and hang up amazing photos from Māori artists in your whare and make people super comfortable or uncomfortable. That's on them. But I just honestly, I wish I could tell you how it made me feel, but when I went there for the first time, it was like, wow, like, this is what you could be, you know? I don't know how to explain it. I hope someone's getting me.
No, that's awesome. Like creating space whereby that is normal, because it is normal, right? And it's powerful. And if that feels uncomfortable to some, is it because we've been conditioned to feel like, you know, that way, and why? So thank you for sharing that. It's a really beautiful way to create a space whereby people feel comfortable to share who they are and where we all come from, essentially. Kia ora aroha nui. Harina, he kōrero ai, hei tāpiri, normalizing this with your whānau, have you observed, or it might be even wawata, like aroha nui sharing, you know, when she's an auntie, she wants her, you know, or if she's an auntie, or if she's a mum, what that may look like. So it can be wawata as well.
Well, ko te wawata nui, I'm like, my tamariki and mokopuna will be like, they'll know this he taonga tēnei, which is such powerful change coming from how colonization intentionally made sure we didn't know. So it's quite reassuring to know that that's going to be continued in a different way for us. But one thing I did is I got the Waifero book, and it was beautiful and I got the Taiao Te Atua book, actually. It was quite powerful. My good sister Te Uinga and I were talking about how we want to create the space for young people here in Te Arawa. And at the time, nothing was really kind of out there. And we had this whakaaro about te akina tō whenua, te akina tō tinana, te akina tinana me papatuanu ka rohoki. And then like, I just happened to go to this hui where I met Nandos, who was Ngāhui's husband. So we just got talking about it, and I mentioned how amazing his wife is. And he goes, just wait there. And he gave me the books. So, you know, it was kind of like mahi a te wairua timing wise. So I received the books from her husband, and I was just so enlightened because it's so powerful, the stories in there about hine nui te pō, and about, you know, hine te iwa iwa ko tātou. And so what I did is I actually gave the book to my mum, because I, you know, because we didn't have this knowledge. So I can understand how it was suppressed from us. And what my mum thought to do then was to hold rituals for her mokopuna now, or in our whānau. So it's something that's still to be discussed on how that might work. for each individual. But for me, I think if you can share the mātauranga deeply and well enough for each individual to make their own choices, that's something that I want for my future descendants, is really to make conscious decisions and choices with all the knowledge and information. Yeah, instead of having like one ritual for all, it's more like understand your own ritual for your own self. And then obviously we come together and heritinga. But yeah, I do get so inspired listening and watching you speak, Aroha Nui. I'm just like, yes, man, we want that for our, you know, and that's beautiful as, yeah.
Kia ora. Anything to add, Holly, around within the whānau context with Ikura?
Just totally tautoko Aroha Nui and Harina. Yeah, like I always get caught up in Aroha Nui's buzz. Like she's just like taking you on this journey and you're like, yes. Like I always leave so excited from her kōrero. Yeah, and just, yeah, the idea of it being a celebrated thing, it having positive connotations, and like exactly what you're saying, Harina, like everyone feeling secure and enough in it that they can make conscious and informed decisions around what they want. Like I always think, I don't think I would have wanted a ritual when I was 11 getting my Ikura, like if my mum had invited all our whānau around, and maybe that was around the social shame thing, but I think, yeah, like, but if I had been given the if my whānau had been able to give the space for me to make conscious decisions about what rituals I did want, I think that would have been so powerful for me at that age and continuing on now as well. So yeah, that I'm thinking hard out about that, like how do I feel that sense of secureness and of self-assurance and self-confidence, so that our next, like our coming generations, feel like they can make decisions based on what they really want rather than what they think they should want or what their peers are saying, or yeah, social expectations.
Kia ora, Holly. Karawe, and I see in the chat too, from Dipa, my tani always had a stash of chocolate for his girls. Yeah, so knowing, you know, and as well, I remember when I started getting enlightened by how the kōrero and the mahi our ancestors did, I was like, well, I'm not cooking tonight. You know, it can be as simple as I'm off duty, you know, I've got to rest and repair, and who is gonna cook tonight, you know, or just sharing the load, because we hold a lot of, you know, in quite practical ways, how can we care for others during this time? And yeah, as well, thinking about our cycles and how often we sink. I see Tony shared, you know, if we're getting this at collective times, how can we collectively like honor that as well? So thank you for everyone for sharing their whakaaro. And I know we've got a few minutes left together, so I just wonder if there's any closing kōrero anyone wants to add around Ikura, and whether we want to share, like if we had one thing that's really to reinforce, we talk about the mana of Ikura, that may, I guess, leave this space talking about the mana of this, and any closing comments around that. Ka whiua kia koe aroha nui te tuatahi.
Cool. I think a lot of it has already been said, but I guess like don't be afraid to question what you've been taught about the Ikura, and yeah, like if you have the energy and the time, it's really fulfilling to dive deeper into this kaupapa. Maybe read the book, Dr. Ngahuia Murphy's book, if you want to learn more, because like at the end of the day, this is a journey you have to go on for yourself, because we're all individuals and it's different for all of us. You know, for some of us, the Ikura is really heavy. For some of us, it's really light, or you don't get it very often. I don't know, but maybe the biggest thing I wish I had known, so I'll end on this, is like really just listen to your body. And I know that we say that a lot, but you can, if you even just take 5 minutes a day to really tune in on how you feel, like process your thoughts, process, you know, if your body's sore, if you're carrying something on your shoulders, whatever, just really give yourself that time to check in with yourself. Because I think we're in this day and age where we have like 24 access to news and information on our phones, and we're always busy, I don't even know how we do it, but we manage to fill 24 hours. And yet we still can't take 5 minutes for ourselves. So the most like empowering thing you can do sometimes is take 5 minutes for yourself, so that you can better understand the tohu, or the signs your body is giving you, so that you can listen and ultimately look after your vessel and your body that carries you through this life. I think that's why what this whole journey was about was looking after ourselves better, remembering that we are the Taiao. And so when you look after yourself, and when you get that connection and like, oh, I'm somebody worthy of care, like I'm somebody that I need to take care of, then without even realizing it, you'll start caring for the Taiao as well, because you're caring for you. And you can only give if you're looked after. You know, you can't pour from an empty cup. So look after yourself, look after your tinana, check in on your body, like take 5 minutes to just like breathe, pretty much is what I'm saying. And yeah, slow down if you can, have a nap. And when you look after yourself, it makes it so much easier, more rewarding to look after the Taiao too, because you'll have that connection with the Taiao when you understand you are also the Taiao, and you are also worthy of care and respect and nurturing. And I think when you realize that, it'll be so easy to make the switch to look at like to the better products or whatever for, you know, moon cups and period undies. But yeah, it all stems from looking after yourself. I don't know if that even makes sense, guys. I'm so sorry, but that's kind of how it went down in my brain anyway. Mauri ora.
Kia ora, mauri ora. Holly?
Yeah, just thank you to Karakore and Hinerangi for providing the space for us to put it all about this, and thank you to the audience for coming along and listening. I don't know if audience is the right word, and putting your comments in and stuff that's in the chat. That's awesome. I guess one piece of advice I might give is around not feeling like with all things parakore, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Like I found I was preaching the theory of Ikura before I felt it. Like I was saying, like I was telling people, oh yeah, it's whakapapa, before I even truly believed it myself. And even like with the products, like I was, even once we were learning more about them, so I was already using reusable undies, but tampons as well. And it's taken me a long time to move away from tampons even. Like even once you know things, it can still take time for the practice to change, and that's okay. Yeah, that's my advice.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Ka tuku pea ki a koe harina ana. Thank you everyone who has shared comments and whakaro in this space today. And just to let everyone know, if there is any other pātai to share with us, we might not talk about it here, but look to share out kōrero and tailor kōrero around any questions you might have, so feel free to add that in the chat. So ka huri ki a koe harina ki te tuku, he kōrero whakamatunga me te karakia whakakapi i tēnei wahanga? Ka pai ki tēnā koe.
Yeah, tēnā koe. Tēnā koutou mō te whakapiri mai ki tēnei hui. One thing that was coming to me is once I was more aware of this mātauranga and the power of our whare tangata, it just opens the space of thinking beyond, I mean, we are the portal to the other realm. We bring life in with our tāne and the kākano that is placed within us, but our responsibility to care and nurture for that universe, a lot of it sits with us and our understanding. And so it's not branching out of this kaupapa, but I think it's important for other young women to understand, or women in general. Once I understood that power and that tapu that sits within me, it really makes you think how the honour that be within, and that, like what you're talking about, Rohanui, about knowing our worth to care for ourselves, but it's also the worth of entry to the space. And I'm meaning like sexually, or, whether he wahine he tāne rānei, the honour to be within the space. It's just something also that I really understand now through re-immersing into our kōrero tuku iho. So it's that in itself is another powerful part of understanding our mana and our Māori and our tūturutanga ki te wāhingaro. Nā reira, koe ra noe pēr tāku I tēnei wā. Nā reira, ka karakia whakakapi.
Kia ora, ai, tēnā.
Ka pai. E mihi ana ki a tātou katoa, I ui mai ki tēnei wānanga, rāroara potonoa aha rānei. E mihi ana ki a ranginui, he tui honei, kia papatu anuku e takoto ki ngā pauwhare o ngā mātua tūpuna e whakaaro nui ana ki a tātou katoa. Ki ngā āhuatanga o wairua o kai, o mātauranga, e whakaāhu ana, e whakaauaha ana I a tātou me ngā koranga. E mihi kau ana ki ngā tamariki mokopuna e whakamohio mai ana ki a tātou I o rātou āhua, kia marama ai tātou ki ngā huatanga e tae ai e tātou. Nā reira, ko ngā mihi anō, ka kawea mai te wāhingaro, ki konei ki a tātou I tēnei rā. Nā reira, kia wātea, kia āio, kia marama, mai ea tuku.
Ngā mihi.
Ngā mihi.
Tēnā koe harina.
Ka pai whānau.
Pai tora.
Pai te ahi ahi.